They were my employers. I carried out their wishes to the letter.
A young black boy named Bernard is shining shoes, but suddenly he gets caught by the police and sent to his father, who tells him to stop these things, as he could get killed for this because black people were severely discriminated against. But Bernard is a very bright boy and wants to make more money, so he has been noting every conversation of the bankers while shining their shoes and has already learned a bunch of new things. His father spots his notebook and realizes his son is a genius, but since he's black, he won't be able to achieve his dreams because of racism. Some years later, Bernard moves to Los Angeles, California to achieve his dream with his wife and children. He and his family have to stay in a storeroom of one of his relatives, but he promises his wife that they will move out soon. Bernard explores the city and finds out that the black community is overcrowded and has been pushed to the outskirts of the city, while the majority of the buildings in the main city are owned and rented out by white men. He sees that these buildings are mostly empty and some with few tenants and sees a business opportunity. He contacts lots of building owners, but the prices are too high to negotiate a deal. Finally, he finds a building he wants to buy that is 2 blocks away from a black neighborhood. He and his wife go to see the building to negotiate the price. He tells his wife they can buy the building, but they don't have the money to restore it, to which his wife has an idea where they might find a co-investor. They go to a club where his wife used to work to try to convince the owner, Joe, who is his wife's old friend and also a real estate developer, to invest in their business, but Bernard does not like him and decides not to work with him. His wife tries to convince Bernard because Joe is a smart businessman with many connections to powerful people, but Bernard does not listen to his wife. The next day, he meets with the owner, Barker, to negotiate the price. Barker wants $40,000. Bernard insists that the building is only half occupied and needs a lot of renovation. He says he can offer him $30,000. He offers to pay $30,000 now and pay the rest in June from the money he will get from his tenants. Barker is impressed by this, but he is afraid to close the deal because it is too risky. Bernard expresses his understanding as he leaves. He glances at Barker's calendar and sees it was given by a local bank manager. This gives him an idea, and he goes to the bank to meet the manager, but his secretary refuses to introduce him. He goes outside the bank and awaits the manager to come outside. After waiting for hours, the manager, Reed, finally comes out. Bernard introduces himself and tries to get a loan of $10,000 using Mr. Barker's name, but Reed refuses. Later that night, he is sulking over the situation when he receives a phone call. It is Barker who asks Bernard if he has used his name to try to get a loan of $10,000. Bernard tells him the truth and apologizes for using his name, but to his surprise, Barker tells him that his loan has been approved, as Mr. Barker has acted as his guarantor because he admires his confidence in this deal. Bernard buys the building and starts renovations on it. The next day, an old white lady returns home from shopping and is shocked to see Bernard, who was doing repairs in the building. She mistakes him for a handyman, but when Bernard reveals that he is the new owner of the building, she gets furious and goes up to her apartment. They start by renovating the empty apartments, bringing them up to standard. 2 police officers come, and they tell him that they have received a complaint from the same old lady about Bernard impersonating the owner. Bernard keeps his cool and tells the officers that he is the owner. He shows them a copy of the ownership papers. The officers inspect the papers and leave with just a warning. Later that night, he moves in the building with his family. The old white lady does not like this and decides to leave the building the very next day. Barker comes to visit and sees that the building is now fully leased. He is amazed by the genius of Bernard. He offers Bernard a 50-50 partnership in which Bernard will handle the investors, and Barker will be the face of the deal. Bernard accepts the deal and both get to work. Bernard finds buildings with potential, and Barker closes the deals with the owners. Things finally work out for Bernard as both Barker and he make a lot of money, enough for Bernard to buy a beautiful mansion for his family. But good times don't last long, as his partner Barker passes away suddenly, and all the assets are inherited by his wife. Barker's wife is a racist. She approaches Bernard with her lawyer to buy the 50% of the business he owns. Bernard does not want to sell, but she makes it clear that she does not want to continue the business with Bernard. Bernard has no choice but to accept. She offers to buy his shares at a very low price and threatens him that if he does not accept, she will sue him, knowing he would surely lose the case, as the agreement between him and Barker was only verbal. Troubled by this, he goes to see Reed to ask him to testify for him, but Reed refuses to meet him as he has already sided with Barker banker's wife. Disappointed, he is ready to leave the bank when, suddenly, he realizes the building he is standing in is also a commercial building with 4 banks, all of them with their doors closed to black people. He plans to buy this building, so there will be no more discrimination against him. He then finds Joe and shares this plan to buy the commercial building. He offers Joe a partnership, but Joe thinks that Bernard is out of his mind, as the land is overpriced and no black man has ever bought land in downtown Los Angeles. But talking with Bernard, Joe realizes Bernard is not delusional, but quite rational. Bernard explains to Joe that this will greatly benefit them. Being the landlords of the banks would not dare to disapprove their loans, and they would get better info about the real estate market through the banks, making their real estate business grow more smoothly. Still, neither of them can negotiate with white people, so they need an agent who will represent them, a white man they can trust. Bernard already has a person in mind, Matt, who has already been helping with the renovations. This guy is an honest young white man who is inexperienced but is ambitious. They explain this to Matt, who is confused by hearing their plan, but Bernard assures him that they will teach him everything he needs to know, from golf to mathematics to table manners and real estate. Matt agrees to this deal, and his training begins. Matt starts slowly, but he gradually improves in all fields. He is a new man now and can calculate the real estate values of properties while playing exceptional golf. Bernard and Joe decide that Matt is now ready for the job. Joe arranges a meeting between Matt and the owner of the banker's building, Charles, at the most exclusive golf club in the city. Matt plays exceptionally well, which impresses Charles. The conversion goes really well, and Matt proposes to buy the banker's building, and Charles is willing to negotiate. After the game, he is very nervous, but Bernard calms him down. Bernard helps Matt with all the preparations for the negotiations. He first counts the number of lights off in the banker's building after dark and calculates the vacancy rate of the building. He also calculates its market value through the building's revenue and operating costs. He prepares all the related numbers and asks Matt to memorize them. The next day, Matt arrives at the banker's building for the negotiations with Charles, who tries to bluff Matt with fake numbers, but Matt is one step ahead and gives the exact numbers each time, which shocks Charles and his accountant, seeing that Matt cannot be fooled. Charles agrees on the negotiated price and sells the building. The plan works, and they buy the building that was priced at $2.4 million for $1.56 million. Bernard and the rest of them celebrate that the same bank that did not want to help him is now his tenant. Whenever he goes in and out of the building, he is greeted by the presidents of all the banks. That gives Reed a run for his money. Bernard and Joe's real estate business begins to bloom, and they buy more buildings in the white neighborhoods and rent them out to black people, breaking the black and white segregation in LA single-handedly. Many young and promising blacks move into white neighborhoods. They even get received by the vice president. Several years later, Bernard visits his hometown in Texas to visit his father. They share a lovely dinner, and his father finds out that Bernard has met the vice president. After dinner, Bernard and his father go to smoke on the deck, and his father tells him that he is proud of Bernard and all he has achieved in Los Angeles.
I'm proud of you, son.
The next day, Bernard takes his son for a walk through his hometown. Both walk through the neighborhood, and his son notices there is a lot of racism there, and they reach the bank where Bernard used to shine shoes. He sees another black boy at the same spot he had been. He asks him for a shine, but he refuses, as he only shines white people's shoes. Bernard is hurt seeing his hometown in this state and his fellow black people still facing the same racism. That night, he discusses this with his wife, who says the same thing, that Texas has not changed like the rest of the world. Bernard wants to help the black people in Texas because he feels a sense of responsibility towards them, and his wife decides to support him in this. He meets up with Joe as soon as he comes back to Texas and explains to him that he wants to buy a bank in Texas. Joe knows that Texas is a very racist place, and owning a bank would be an impossible task for 2 black men. Bernard insists that he wants to help the black community of Texas. Joe does not see this as a wise business decision, as they are already making a lot of money, and they might lose everything if they go down this path.
Did I not wake up black this morning? Because I'm pretty sure I did.
But seeing Bernard's persistence, he agrees to partner with him to buy the Mainland Bank in Texas. They prepare Matt again to buy the bank and arrive in Texas. Matt meets up with Robert Florence, the owner of Mainland Bank, and his son, Robert Florence Jr. Despite Jr.'s suspicions, his father agrees to sell the bank to Matt and his partners. Bernard announces his ownership of Mainland Bank to the local black community of Texas and tells them that he will change the bank's policy and will give out loans to black people and help them them in any way he can, from starting a business to buying a house. He will help the community grow all together, but they have to do this in silence, as they do not want to draw attention to this new policy, nor to his ownership of the bank. Slowly, but steadily, Bernard finds potential black clients and gives them the loans they need. The black community begins to prosper with Bernard's help, which makes him feel that he has fulfilled his responsibility. Florence Jr. becomes suspicious of the new loans the bank has been giving out and confronts Matt about them. Matt explains that the new loans are just to make a profit, but Florence Jr. does not believe Matt and investigates the loans further. Soon, he finds out that the bank has been giving loans to black people. The next day, Bernard, Joe, and Matt meet up at Matt's house to discuss a solution to this problem. Just as they are discussing the problem, they receive an uninvited guest, Florence Jr., who has figured out that Bernard and Joe are the real owners of the bank. Florence Jr. tries to blackmail them by saying he will leak the information about their new policy and ownership of the bank and sue them for fraud, as his father did not know that he would be selling the bank to two black men, and smirks, but his smile fades away when Bernard tells him that they have evidence that his father knew.
And for the record, your father knew.
He then gives them a letter from the U.S. Treasury Department, which had moved up the bank's inspection to next month. As Florence Jr. leaves, the guys think of their next move. Matt has an idea, and he proposes that they should buy another bank, Bank Marlin, a small bank, which will be cheaper, and Matt can move all of the black loans from Mainland Bank to Marlin Bank before the inspection. Matt has done all the calculations and thinks it will work out. Bernard and Joe don't agree with Matt on this, as they can't run all this alone. Matt presents a solution to this that he will own and run the new bank. Bernard and Joe are not happy with this decision at first, but they agree to trust Matt on the condition that Bernard's wife will keep an eye on Matt during this, and they buy the Marlin Bank with Matt as the owner. Matt is now the owner of the bank, just like he wanted. Bernard meets with him and explains to him that there is no room for error and that he has to cross-check all the documentation when giving loans. Bernard also asks him to contact Michael, who is a lawyer Bernard has worked with for years. He soon meets up with a lawyer and starts signing loan contracts. Later, he receives a call from Florence Jr. saying that some customers want to withdraw all the money from Mainland Bank because they think their money is used to give loans to black people. To make matters worse, a federal officer arrives to inspect the Bank of Marlin. Matt calls Bernard for help, and Bernard dresses up as a janitor to get inside the bank to help Matt with the inspection. The federal officer finds various faulty loans and confronts Matt about them. Matt takes them to Bernard, who is surprised to see these loans because he had individually looked at every loan before.
There was nothing over $20,000, nothing over 20 years. I looked over every individual loan, Matt. They're all averages.
He asks Matt about these new loans, and Matt has no answer. It turns out this was all Florence Jr. doing all along. In rushing to run the bank, Matt had skipped protocols and used a lawyer whom Florence Jr. recommended instead of Michael, through whom Florence Jr. was able to sneak in the faulty loans. Later that night, Bernard and Joe, unable to find a solution, tell Matt that they are walking away from Marlin Bank as it is the only rational option, but Matt does not want his bank to shut down. In a desperate attempt to save his bank, he goes behind Bernard and Joe's backs and pays off all the loans of his bank using the Mainland Bank. Bernard and Joe find out about this the next day, and they go to Mainland Bank to confront Matt. They enter Matt's office, furious with him, while Florence Jr. watches them with a smirk on his face. Bernard tells Matt to get their books, but it is too late now. The federal bank officers arrive to revoke Mainland Bank's license to operate, and to make matters worse, the FBI arrests Bernard and Joe while leaving the building.
Hey, get off! No!
Later, they meet up with their lawyer, who tells them that their case was dragged along by some racial politics in the country. Meanwhile, Matt talks with Senator McClellan, who offers Matt immunity if he testifies against his partners. Matt thinks about the offer all night and makes a phone call. Matt follows McClellan's suggestions and testifies against Bernard and Joe in the Senate hearing the next day. After the hearing, Bernard meets with McClellan, who gives two options. The first option is to follow his lead and confirm the testimony of Matt, which will give Bernard immunity, and the second option is that Matt can say what he wants and go to jail. Bernard thinks about this long and hard, and in the end, he decides to say the words he has wanted to say his entire life. In the hearing, he gives a speech about the racial discrimination in the country. As a result, both of them are sentenced to federal prison for 3 years, and the government seizes all of their assets except one that was in the name of Bernard's wife. Florence Jr. buys the Mainland Bank by paying only a fraction of the money Bernard and Joe paid by making a deal with the feds, and Matt was never charged with any crime. 3 years later, Bernard and Joe get out of prison. His wife asks him why both of them are happy, as they have lost all their wealth. But that is not the case, as Joe reveals they have properties next to each other in the Bahamas. His wife is in disbelief and asks him how this is possible. It turns out the man Matt called that night was Bernard. He told him about the senator's deal and apologized to him that he is gonna take it. Bernard was okay with this and asked him for this favor before the government took all their money. Bernard and Joe then rebuilt their fortunes in the Bahamas before moving back to the United States. All of the buildings that they bought in the white-only areas became instrumental in the fight against housing segregation in Los Angeles. And 3 years after their hearing, Congress passed the Fair Housing Act of 1968, which made it illegal to refuse to sell or rent property on the basis of race, religion, and gender.